Welcome to People Helping People, the podcast to help social entrepreneurs build a stronger business and have a greater impact. I'm your host, Adam Morris, and today we're talking about something which sounds very wonderful and nice, but is really hard in practice, which is confidence. And what I found from working with social entrepreneurs in our city is that as we develop our new missions, as we figure out our place in this world, that it's a lot of work. Personal stuff comes up, and how we show up impacts the amount of work that we're able to do. I'm very excited to have on two wonderful guests today, Rachyl Kershaw from Greater Columbus Consulting and Lachandra Baker from LLB Edutainment to talk about the upcoming Confidence Lab. Without further ado, Rachyl and Lachandra, welcome on the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Two guests today, which is really exciting. Rachyl, do you want to kick us off and just tell us a little bit about what you do?
So Greater Columbus Consulting is the company I started to bring everything I had learned in the corporate world, from my technology origin story all the way through to the boardrooms that I sat in towards the end of my corporate journey when I saw iterations, if you will, of the same sorts of information being proposed by different rounds of board members. And so seemed like there were several sort of key lessons that all businesses could benefit from knowing. And I, quite frankly, was sick of working in software and making VCs money. And I wanted to go help real people here in our community be just as successful as the businesses that have these boardrooms to help them. But I spent a lot of time finding my people, and most of the people that I found that I really connected with ended up being somewhere along the social enterprise spectrum, from nonprofits where my business advice could help, all the way through to conscious capitalists that were really trying to figure out how to be a force for good while making money. So I've run into many of those rooms, and it's always a good time.
Rachyl has been alongside my journey in Get Back Hack, really helping us build out the infrastructure. And is a big part of the bridging the gap between the tech side of Columbus and the impact side of Columbus. And La, you've been one of my past guests on the podcast.
Yes.
I love having you back because
I'm so grateful to be back.
I think my favorite energy in Columbus is like you.
Thanks, bud. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So with that, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so very similar to Rachyl, I had about 35 years in corporate spaces, and I was learning basically, I'd say everything people. So it was around employee engagement, company culture, internal communication, diversity, equity, inclusion. So it really is the heartbeat of every organization, which is the people. Because even if you say, oh, it's products, well, who builds the products, right? It's the people. Who buys the products? People. So it's one of those things that I think people get confused about business, but I'm like, you have no business without people. And so it's something that's very important to me to bring that to the forefront always. And I challenge people in what their ideas of a good culture is, because it's not a top down directive, number one. It's all of the things that you both say and you don't say. It's the tangibles and intangibles. And I just try to help companies understand that and to help empower their people to be able to live up to that.
And I still remember the first time I met you. I believe you were giving a keynote talk to the philanthropist in Columbus. And I just remember being blown away in the audience. I'm like, yes, that's exactly it. And then, I love this. Just being able to show up and treating each other like we're human beings, because that's what we are.
It's such a beautiful thing, yes. And it's funny that, you and I were in that same row, place, and I knew Vicky Bowen Hughes in that same place, and I knew Alan Proctor back then, but I never met Rachyl, which is so mind-boggling to me, because we literally were in the same circles over and over again, and we didn't meet till last year, which is just still, I don't you understand that.
Well, Adam actually plays a large part in that. So I reached out to my network because I had a pretty clear picture of what I wanted the first Confidence Lab to be, but energy and bringing full humanity out in people, it was a big part. I mean, I'm a computer programmer originally, right? Like that was my original career. So that's not the role I can play really at these events. And so Adam, actually, one of the names that he suggested was you, La. And I'm so grateful.
Same.
I had no idea. I love that.
So you're the Columbus Kevin Bacon. It's just Adam now. So instead of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, we're 6 degrees of Adam Morris.
I'll take it. I love this city, and I love all the great interconnections of people coming together. So last year you came together for the Confidence Lab. Like, what spurred the idea to hold this in the first place?
Well, the original idea actually came from me trying to talk about what I did at Greater Columbus Consulting. I did some brand consulting with a company, and talking about what are the skills and what are the voice, the vibe, if you will, of the company. And one of the things that came out of that was this idea of confidence, giving people confidence in their executive decision making. And I really it just kept popping back up in my head that that is what was holding back so many people that I talked to from really starting the business or the nonprofit or the social enterprise that they wanted to start. It was also stopping people from just being their full selves in the roles that they were already in. And to me, the more that we can all bring who we are and what we care about into what we do, A, the more fulfilling everything we do will be. And B, wouldn't the world be a better place? So that sort of idea just kept cycling in my brain. And I started creating some exercises and thinking about where my confidence comes from and how I maintain it and sort of, gathering my thoughts around that, but then also knowing I needed big personalities and that sort of hype side of things. The reason I don't call myself a coach, right? I needed some of that energy in the room for people to really understand how we can all support each other and how we can all practice this and how much better the world could be if we all just brought our full actual humanity is the best words I can say, because it's definitely a good kind of confidence, the kind that comes from knowing who you are, why you bring value to the room, and what you should definitely let somebody else speak on and being fine with that, not needing to be the expert in everything.
And that's super relatable too. Just, this feeling that, hey, thrust into a role in life. And sometimes we're just doing it because that's what our job is. And, we don't know what our place is in that world or what our agency is to speak up and actually express ourselves.
Yeah. For me, at least, around the time that I decided to pull the trigger, it really felt like there was a shift change in the world in terms of the way people were speaking to each other. I mean, everybody talks about things getting more polarized. And my experience is people are really opinionated and far apart when they're anonymous on the internet, but you get any two humans speaking in person, and both of them actually want something good for the world. The things that we care about and want to foster are almost always genuinely helpful to our community. And so maybe people needed confidence in more than just their day to day. And also, I've been in those rooms in the workplaces, and they were rough enough before, and they would shut down dissenting opinions fast enough before. If the world was getting like this, how many more people needed some confidence in order to be a force for good, even if it's just within the company they're already working for? Let alone needed the inspiration to go and start that thing the world needs, even though, funding was going away and it was harder feeling than ever to be a good person and to speak up about doing something good for the community. And so it seemed like it was time to stop thinking about Confidence Lab and time to make it happen. I picked a date and I was able to get my dream lineup and better than I could have ever dreamed, honestly.
What takeaways did you notice people were learning from last year?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think the number one thing I heard beyond this is just what I needed was just how good it feels to know that you're not alone and to know that no matter what somebody looks like on the outside, we're all having to do these practices in order to continue to show up after a rough day. What about you, Law? What did you notice?
Yeah, very much a lot of that. We had so many varying styles that at Confidence Lab, and what I feel like it was like people could see themselves in either any one of us, right? So it's like you had people who were like like the operators like Rachel is who like organize and get it together, and then she's like, all right, I'm gonna step back, let y'all do your thing, and then you had somebody like Deja who is so calming and and just centering people. Then you got me and Sarah who were like wilding out, right? And then you got Varsity who is just so lean, tall, and is just together and commanding the room. So it was just a beautiful mix of folks. And then Vicky as well was there with just so much wisdom. So you're like, exactly what Rachel's saying. It's a dream team because that's what true diversity and true belonging and true confidence looks like. We were all able to walk in our own lane and walk in our own confidence of who we were and our superpower. And we didn't feel like we were competing with each other. We truly felt like we were collaborating. And that is something I think a lot of women really in business don't think we can do because sometimes there's such a scarce amount of roles, especially in the C suite that they're in. So they're clawing onto them like, I got to hang on. I'm the only one. And instead of us fighting for the only one, we should say, why the hell isn't there two or three or five or a million, right? So we were asking those questions. And so that's what I took away from the lab, is just saying, like, everybody show up as you are, your authentic selves. You'll be welcomed here. You'll be celebrated here. You'll be affirmed here. And then we'll be your sisters when you need to go do something else, and we got your back.
Well, and I love that you mentioned women, because I feel like a lot of people think of this as a women's thing, but I got to admit, it never was in my head originally. But when I picked the people that I was looking around town who I saw practicing confidence, by the way, I mean that word, the healthy kind of confidence, that's a growth mindset. It just so happened that almost everybody in my dream team picture was a woman.
I love how things are connected in this city, and how when we show up for each other, like new doors and new possibilities open. Lachandra, I'm curious from your perspective of like, if you had to describe somebody who came to the Confidence Lab last year. Rachyl said that there was this common theme of like, oh, I'm not alone. What is it that people are feeling when they come in their own
Yeah.
roles? Like, what does that
I
mean for
think you
them?
feel tossed by the world, right? I feel like you're on a boat and you're just doing this all the time. It's like we can't find our sea legs. I mean, that's how I've felt over this last probably 18 months. I don't even say just last year, but the whole last 18 months is just trying to stay afloat and not feel like you're literally off balance all the time. And I think that's what happens with a lot of women, because we have so many boxes that we have to fit in to be considered a leader, to be considered to be executive presence, that's considered to be even, an authority of any way, shape, or form. So the people who came to this place, they were tired. I can tell you that they were just tired, and they're like, I want to be someplace where I can quote unquote let my hair down and stop playing the game. I just want to be myself. And that's what we allowed them to be. And that's what we encouraged them to be. And that's how we showed up for ourselves, being our best selves. And I think that's what people just needed. When you say I'm not alone, but it's also, I can do this. I'm capable. I belong in every room I'm in. I don't have to try to belong. I belong. Right. And so it's that kind of thing where you just remind yourself who's in you already. Like all of the power and everything that we want to be the best part of ourselves is already inside us, right? We just need to have those barriers and those blockages removed so we can see that path forward. And so coming to the Confidence Lab is exactly that. We're here to help you push those boulders out of the way, right? So we're just going to make sure we help everybody. We meet them where they are and we take us forward, right? And so it's like a chain. We might not be walking side by side, but we're all in this chain together, kind of like a V shape of those birds, right? Those birds that fly. Somebody's leading it, but they're all the wings, all the wind of the wings. It keeps everybody afloat, right? And so that's how I look at it.
Man, this metaphor of a murmuration has been popping into my life recently, where you have a flock of birds and they're all flying together, and no one bird is leading, right? Every bird
No,
is doing its thing, but
yeah,
they're feeding off of each other and the people around them. And they make these great,
that's
beautiful
exactly right.
shapes. Now, and I think that's very relatable for what I see with a lot of budding social entrepreneurs. Like if I think of people who come to Give Back Hack and they pitch an idea for a social impact business, and then, all right, yeah, maybe they get some grant funding and they are starting to get off the ground. They're typically not these entrepreneurs that are like the macho, like, I am going to go take my idea to a venture capitalist and get lots of money. They're like, I want to make this impact in my community. I don't really know how to start a business, but I'm going to do that because it sounds interesting.
Yeah,
And there is almost this sense of like, this is really uncomfortable because one, I didn't sign up to do sales. I didn't sign up to, be a business person. I didn't sign up to go out and have all these conversations in my community that I didn't imagine I would need to have. And so there's a lot of this feeling of like, I'm really out of my element.
Yeah.
I'm curious to both of you, what would you tell somebody who's in this place?
I mean, I feel like the internet's full of stories of entrepreneurship in and of itself being lonely. And I feel like there's a lot about when you're working on something meaningful, the stakes feel extra high. And so that can just sort of exacerbate this loneliness and this carrying too much on your shoulders. And again, we're here to talk about healthy confidence. So the whole put it all on your shoulders, you can carry it, isn't really what we're saying. We're saying be clear what you are good at, be confident in what you are good at, and be confident enough to let go of some of the other stuff and let people help you.
that's exactly right. I mean, because that's the part of it. The confidence is knowing that you can't handle it all and knowing where your sweet spot is, right? And then delegating other things, invite other people to the party. I'll tell you one of the most beautiful things that came out of the confidence lab for me, Adam. It was a matter of when we all got together and we started talking, we were like, okay, how's your business going? Like, where are you finding contracts? What's been a challenge for you? What are you looking at? And we all started seeing like we're having the same problem where we might get an RFP at a contract that looks really good, but we got to assemble a team together. So you're like chasing people like, hey, can you work on this? Oh, you're busy. Okay, what about this person? Oh, do you know somebody who does that? Right. And so one of the things we started doing was talking and saying, we all got these pretty cool skill sets that are complementary of each other. Like, why don't we come together as a collective and go after some of these things to fund our dreams and fund our social enterprise? And we're like, yeah, why don't we do that? And so that was something that I think was super beautiful because all of us kind of knew each other, but we didn't know each other until Confidence Lab. And then Confidence Lab kept putting us together and we kept building these relationships. And so I think that's another part of it. Right. Part of the confidence is knowing that you don't have to do everything and you don't have to do everything like perfectly. First of all, there's no such thing as perfection. There's only excellence. And you can be excellent in a whole lot of things, but not perfect in anything. And so it was just so lovely for all of us to kind of talk together. And now we're out there pitching ourselves as the Confidence Collective because we are a collective group of just brilliant leaders doing very cool things to make the world a better place. And we'll take corporate dollars to do so. Just saying.
Well, and just this idea of you show up to life and dive deep in what you enjoy, because it's one, that's probably what you're good at, but also like you don't need to do everything. And I think there's so much power in that, just for an entrepreneur who typically is like putting everything on their shoulders and saying, well, I've got to figure out this, and I've got to figure out my revenue streams. I got to figure out my business model, my impact model, and I've got to learn how to do accounting and finance and QuickBooks all at the same time. And it's,
Yep.
you see that. And then they have a full-time job doing something else. And it's just like, how am I navigating this? Being able to step back and say, hey, listen, it doesn't need to all be you, right?
It doesn't.
There's people in the city you can partner with so that you can shine from your strengths.
And this really is an amazing city for that. I feel like it is remarkably rare, if not essentially non-existent, to reach out to somebody in this city to talk to them about what they do and or to get a little bit of insight of what their perspective is on what you're doing and to be turned down. I think almost everybody in this city is more than willing to meet with people and to help them and to encourage anyone trying to do something good and useful.
Yeah, that is something I think that sets Columbus apart from other areas of the country.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear from each of you a small story of like a time that you found agency in your own life to do something. Where was that moment where it's like, you were like, yeah, actually, I am empowered to do this, and it's not as hard as I think. Or maybe it was really hard.
Does
What would be
parenting
that
count?
story? Parenting counts. Yeah, is that it? I'm on my path to become a
It is.
parent soon, so I'm
my
taking all the
goodness, yeah.
wisdom I can get.
I've taken all the wisdom. So it's parenting in one way because you always want to find this balance where you're not pushing all your literal crap on your kid, right? You're trying to say, yes, I want to protect you in so many places and so many ways in the world, but I also want to let you spread your wings and figure things out and go do some things. And that was very hard for me. But then I had to decide, hey, confidently, I put a foundation in that kiddo that was really solid. They know who they are. They are so comfortable in their own skin. They are so compassionate, empathetic, and wonderful to the world. So I know I did a good job, so I know I can let go a little bit more. And honestly, that's how I think about all relationships in my life. I don't separate personal and professional. Relationships are relationships. If you want to get to know people, you have to be vulnerable and you have to be empathetic and compassionate to get to know them. I don't care if they're giving you money for a service or a product or they're your best friend coming over for dinner. They all deserve the same kind of thought and treatment. And I think because we've tried to separate that so much, we lost that humanity that we so desperately want. So I'm the same person wherever I go and then whoever I'm with. And that's important to me because that keeps me confident because I'm authentically myself and I don't have to pretend and be somebody else.
And it sounds like there's almost just this extra force of letting go where you're trusting that things are going to be just fine, right? It doesn't all have to be on your shoulders, but
That's
you
exactly
can,
right.
in letting go, you can kind of shine in your own strengths and be like, no, this is who I am. I can still be me and let go at the same time, finding that balance.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I could talk for hours because these are sort of the thoughts that I kept rotating in my mind for, almost 2 years before I actually did the thing and started Confidence Lab. Like, why is confidence one of those things that I feel good about helping people with? And one of the things that is a way people have often described me. And it starts out really funny because I will say when I was younger, when people use the word confident to describe me, it was not a compliment. It wasn't the kind of confidence that I'm trying to help people build now. And so it's really interesting to sit around and spend time thinking about how I went from being a person who was sort of, my self identity was that I was smart and that I was capable and sort of being, just defensive about it with the confidence, right? Like I was defending the fact that I believed myself to be smart enough to do the thing, and that's where a lot of the not healthy, confident sounding stuff coming out of my mouth was coming from. And, I'm still smart, but I don't need, to say somebody else's ideas are trivial or anything like that, which I literally did once in my early 20s and like my first year on a real job. I told somebody their concerns about a project were trivial. And that's obviously, sounds like a jerk, but also sounds confident to a lot of people, but in the bad way, right? And so, like, true confidence today is, being willing to hear somebody's concerns, being willing to think through those other points of view, and still being certain that you can bring value to the project, right? And so, how do you go from one to the other? And how do you ground yourself and protect what you are, who you believe you are, while still being vulnerable enough to share the stage, to share the conversation, to share the decision? Because that is the kind of confidence that inspires respect. That is the kind of confidence that is healthy, right? And that's based on, I know my value, not I'm scared somebody's going to prove I'm not valuable, right? And so that's where a lot of the exercises and the lessons that we talk about came from, was me sort of walking through my own history of this and trying to figure out what was different today. What have I been doing for the last couple decades to work towards the version of confidence I would love to see more of in the world, and away from being loud and first to raise your hand, right? That's a different thing.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like I run into a lot of people who are the opposite, right? Where they are deep in the weeds of the details. They understand it. They've done the work. They're competent. But when it comes to expressing their ideas to somebody who is either higher up in their organization, or an important stakeholder outside, that they almost shut down, or they withhold, or they just try to get all the details out in a way which is like not useful.
So I know that I have, like in my actual corporate managing career, I've started using the phrase, you don't get to decide whether or not you're qualified for this job. Somebody already hired you to do it. I think that's a useful thing to think about in a corporate role in particular. But also, there's a little bit of me that's prone to saying everybody poops, right? Like somebody has to have an opinion. Somebody has to do this. Are you the most qualified person in this room? Is sometimes a way to narrow the scope enough that you do feel that you're the person. But also, all of our rooms that we're in, even if somebody else in that room happens to know more, that doesn't mean they didn't come at it from a different angle than you. Like, you're valuable, your perspective is valuable, your ideas are valuable. That doesn't mean they're going to win the room. That doesn't mean they're going to be the choice, but they are worth noting, because in that same way that people are like, if you have a question, maybe everybody else in the room has the question and they're all scared to ask it, right? In the same way that, like, somebody's going to have an opinion, somebody's going to decide, like, why not yours? And what exactly are you holding back for? And yeah, I do think a lot of people who know the subject but don't feel confident in their leadership abilities tend to over explain. And I think that can be okay so long as you do actually start speaking up. Because I think there's also just a track record of practicing that helps us. It helps us refine our technique, refine our way of bringing ourselves into focus in a room. And there's some people who are wildly famous for the thing that they do, and they still wait until they are called upon to speak. It's not really my suggestion, but as long as you speak confidently about what you know when you are called upon, that's a wonderful way to begin.
This idea too, that it's like, it's important that you share your opinion because you've got a piece of the
Yes.
puzzle, right? And I think people hold back because it's like, oh, I need to have all the pieces to the puzzle and I need to be able to paint the right picture before I speak up. And it's like, well, no, somebody else has their piece of the puzzle. So it's important that you both share yours, but also make space for somebody else to share theirs, and so you can figure out how to come together.
I think that's a
Yeah.
really good point. I do think people want to wait until they're certain they have the right answer, but good information is also very, very valuable. And it's a secret, but leaders are almost always deciding without the full set of information they would like to have available to make that decision. So the less certainty you have and the more you are willing to open your mouth anyway, honestly, that is progress on the road to being a great leader.
I love everything you said, Rachel, 100%. But I think there's some value in the leaders who are confident, and I say this way, meaning the bad way. When they come in and they just start spouting out their opinions, people will then be afraid to say anything that might be counter to what that leader has said. And so I always encourage leaders, you speak last, please. Let everybody else start introducing ideas so that they can, first of all, they can have their voice and they say and they heard it, but they don't always feel they have to sway to your side just because what you said. So just kind of let them get the ideas out, let them share information, affirm them for sharing. Not that you're going to take the idea, like Rachel said, but just affirm them for sharing because, like, speaking up helps us become more informed and make better decisions. So that's one big piece I think definitely needs to be said. And also, as a leader, you can make it psychologically safe in the room for other people to share their opinions. Because if you've come from a place where people have honestly reprimanded you for saying something, you're going to be once bitten, twice shy to do it in another place. So, as a leader in an organization or a team, if you say, look, I want all the ideas on the table and we are going to decide the best way to move forward together. So, there's no idea off the wall, throw spaghetti on the wall, whatever you want to do, just let's hear what you have to say and affirm them for putting an opinion out there, but you don't have to say, "Oh yeah, we'll do that." That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying affirm them for sharing and then help them understand why it can or cannot be done at that time.
'Cause then you're open up to new possibilities, right? If you come in and you're not creating that space where other people are sharing, then you're basically trapped by your own limitations. And we all
Correct.
have a limited view of the reality around us based off of our experiences. That's very biased. And
Yeah.
if we're willing to create that possibility for there to be something different, then something greater is going to emerge.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I love what you said. So that's actually something that I've talked to new managers in particular a lot about. And I always am like, don't lead the witness, right? We talk about it in market research, but it's also very important in any business meeting where you're the person in charge in the room. And that's interesting to think about because I do think a lot of the stuff that I bring to Confidence Lab is changes in me that happened as I went from being an individual contributor to management and beyond. And there's something in the mind shift there that's supposed to happen as you go from being an individual contributor to a manager of people, where instead of worrying about yourself, which defensiveness makes a lot of sense, your job as management is to facilitate great work out of these other people. And, as someone who will always make a decision with zero information, because I can fall back on where I came from, right? Like that, those things that I learned, a lot of those practices that we talk about, they come from that other end of it, right? The how to get that room making the best decision, to get that group creating the best outcomes. And really the kind of confidence we're going for is that it's great for teamwork, it's great for leadership. But if you're not yet contributing in that room, that's the first hurdle, is opening your mouth.
Yes, absolutely. If you're in the room, you belong in the room.
You do.
I love it.
100%.
Well, thanks for being here today and sharing all this, opening your mouths to kind of get this word out and give people a nudge of like, here's how you can go in the right direction. People want to find out how to be part of the Confidence Lab. Where do they go? How do they find out about it?
Well, we would love to see you at our first annual Confidence Lab Summit. And that will be Monday, May 4th from noon to 4 at the new Rev 1 at the Peninsula facility. You can find out more at confidencelab.org, read about all of our wonderful speakers and sessions, and purchase early bird tickets if you purchase soon enough.
And do you have events going on throughout the year? How do people stay in
We
touch?
create content throughout the year, and we plan to do quarterly in-person gatherings of the community, but we are always talking to each other in between and maintaining the community year-round.
I love that. And it's so nice to have a space where people can go and connect and actually develop relationships that will lead to collaborative efforts.
Yes,
I think that's so
absolutely.
unique about the Confidence Lab.
It is. We're pretty great. So we want everybody to come be a part of what we're doing because we need more great people.
I love it. Well, Juan, that is just so fantastic. Thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure to speak with you both, and I love what you're doing. If you're listening, check out the Confidence Lab May 4th, and hope to see you there. With that, thanks for listening to this episode of People Helping People. Rachyl and Lachandra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
With that, till next time, cheers.